There's quite a few 10 energy weapons that only cost credits, but in order to use 2 of them, you have to get it to rank 6. So the question is, which one is the best? I get asked this question a lot, so I have decided to make a tier list and rank them based on how worthwhile I think it is to buy and rank them up, with all of the different 10 energy weapons from both Legendary and Epic that cost credits. It's somewhat small and you can skip around to whatever section that you are most interested in, but with each weapon I'm also going to be covering the mechs that I think it does well with, so I think it's a good idea to watch the entire thing to have the best idea of which weapon would be good for a specific mech you might have. Starting with Overdriver 10. S tier, very good. It is one that you can use for quite a while. Nobody uses 10 energy weapons at max level, so you're not going to use it at max level, but you will use it for quite a long time. It'll be very useful for quite a long time, so S tier for that. In the top left corner, I will have a list of my top 3 mechs for each weapon. This one's top 3, I think, are Eclipse, Blockhorn, and Dreadnought. But Overdriver in general is a very decent mid-ranged brawler weapon and can work well on quite a lot of things, mostly tanks. Like, if you have a tank and you want a good weapon for it, Overdriver's a good one. Stormrack up next. Also S tier above Overdriver. This is one that you'll use it for a very long time. Stormrack is an incredibly meta weapon. You are going to want the legendary reload implant for most mechs. Otherwise it's not going to work necessarily. But the top mechs for this weapon, I would say, are like Lacewing, Deathwalker, and Hemlock. Though if you do have a legendary reload implant, you can make Stormrack work on literally anything. There's not a single mech that does actively bad with Stormrack, but if you don't have the reload implant, then you're probably going to want to avoid using it on like really close quarters mechs like Surge. Graviton Beam. This one is A tier. Very extremely strong, but only for a little bit. Once there's more mods involved, once you start to fight players or even bots with more multi-layered mods or even galvanic hulls, the more mods that are involved massively cut the performance of Graviton Beam, because you need a full implosion. A full implosion only takes down 1 layer of a multi-layered shield. That's pretty garbage. The implosion has to chew through galvanic hull as well, because it's considered special damage. So it takes a while to get through mods, but when there's less mods involved, Graviton Beam is stupid. A lot of damage output and really high range too. The range implant is a good one to have. I got mine from the Gear Hub tasks, right? The legendary range implant, even just getting to like 115 meters or something like that. Very good. I think the ideal mechs for this is like Eclipse, Panther, and Blockhorn. Something that can survive out in the open for a long time to be able to build up the status effect multiple times and actually deal real damage. Because of the build-up time, I would stay away from close quarters mechs like Surge, for example. Particle Beam just got a buff, and it's pretty good. I actually like it a lot. I am also going to put it A tier, but I'm going to keep it below Graviton Beam because I think Graviton Beam simply has higher DPS. It is a pretty similar mechanic though, a bit of a pause. You build up the main damage with your beam and then you fire the main damage. In Particle Beam's case, it takes a little bit longer to build it up, but you get to decide when you fire it, so you have a little bit more control there. Very versatile. You could use it on probably pretty much anything. The range is okay, and then there's no damage fall off or anything. I don't think it would work particularly bad on almost anything, but I also don't think it's like specifically meta on anything either, right? If I had to choose 3, I'd go with like Eclipse, because obviously it's just like pretty much everything works good on Eclipse. Hemlock, I think, was another one that I really enjoyed using, and Solus is probably another good one. Important note about Particle Beam though is that there's 2 damage implants, the blast mode damage and the beam damage. You cannot use both of them at the same time, and I think the blast one is better. So generally speaking, yeah, don't bother like trying to get the beam implant if you already have the blast one. Repeater also got a buff, but is still kind of bad. I'm gonna put it in B. It's decent. It's decent now. Now, before the buff, it would have been an F. It would have absolutely been F tier. But now I actually think it is usable, but it's definitely not going to be something you use long term. I think it's a bit niched. When there's basically no mods involved, then Repeater should do pretty darn well. But in basically all scenarios, it's still going to perform worse than Revoker, so I wouldn't really bother with it if you ask my personal opinion. But if you really wanted to get it right, then I think the top 3 mechs for that are going to be like Seeker, Surge, and probably Nomad. Those are 3 like very, very close quarters mechs that specialize in like really high damage in a really short amount of time, right? Revoker, 2 nerfs, and it's still S tier, and it's still above Overdriver. It's really difficult to kill Revoker. Like, it's gonna be meta for a while, fellas. The top mechs for this weapon is pretty much the same as it's always been. Surge, Nomad, Seeker, anything that can close distance really fast is going to do really well. It's not as ideal on Eclipse, but if you're playing like free-for-all, for example, it's still gonna be disgusting. So you could still use it in that case. Tetra Rifle up next. Tetra Rifle, I'm going to put in S tier. Now, I don't think the Tetra Rifle is a good weapon for max meta. However, if we're talking about the 10s here specifically, right? The 10s means that you're not maxed, obviously. So if you're using 10s, you're not fighting at max level, you're fighting at rather high SP maybe, but against modded enemies, but not like super, super heavily modded enemies, and certainly not people with like max legendary mods on everything. And in those cases, Tetra Rifle still does very, very well. So I am going to put it in S at the bottom of S, but still very good. Best mechs for it are, I mean, again, Eclipse, because obviously, but also Blockhorn and Orion do very well as pretty much anything that would do well with either of these weapons, because they do work somewhat similarly. It has good range, and there's a bit of a damage delay, but then there's like a massive spike in your damage after a couple seconds. So, though I will say probably best to only get this if you have good aim, because if you miss one of your charging shots, that really messes you up. And if you miss your last shot especially, you're kind of just cooked. So I would really only get this if you have good aim. Strike Rocket. Now, a lot of you guys know that I've very much been enjoying my Strike Rocket 10s. They do very, very well. Now, I'm still kind of in the short-term phase because I'm like 4,000 or 5,000 SP. Long-term is maybe closer to like 7, possibly even 8,000, something like that, right? But even still, I do think Strike Rocket deserves the S tier here. I think it is very good. It is a meta weapon, right? Like, people use them at max level. I'm gonna put them probably above Tetra Rifle, but below Overdriver here. My top mechs for this would probably be like Solus, Outlaw, and Lacewing. Some people really like Strike Rocket Lacewing. I'm not like 100% sold on it, but I've seen good things, right? But generally speaking, you could use pretty much anything with Strike Rocket because you're not being aggressive. You don't even need an ability. Like, all you need is like 1 HP and a mech that can carry 2 Strike Rockets. It kind of doesn't matter what you are because you're just going to be hiding in the back. But the one downside that Strike Rocket does have is that it fires like up and over. And that's going to be very, very bad in like enclosed areas. It doesn't work indoors at all. It completely rules out some 5v5 maps and makes it very inconvenient for certain free-for-all maps as well. So if you're a heavy tournament grinder, Strike Rocket might not be the first one you go for. Pod Gun. Very similar to Strike Rocket, to be honest. I'd say the main difference is that it has a little bit less safety involved, but it doesn't have the downside of being really bad indoors. So, like, you need to be a little bit closer. You need to be within 100 meters as opposed to Strike Rocket, which is 110 meters at base, and then you can increase that with a range implant, obviously. But Pod Gun only has homing at 100 meters. It also doesn't, go over stuff. But all in all, I'd say they're pretty similar. Again, the top mechs would be like Solus, Lacewing, maybe not Outlaw, maybe Volti, but you can get good results with pretty much anything. Chain Gun is gonna be our first F tier. It's really just extremely bad. That's about it. That's all. Very low DPS. Good range, but like, who cares? It's about the same range as Graviton Beam and Particle Beam and even Tetra Rifle, but it just has way less DPS and it's just less convenient. If you really wanted to use it, I'd probably use it on something tanky, like maybe Blockhorn. But yeah, it's basically just a worse version of Graviton. Hellfire got a buff, right? It got 2 buffs, didn't it? It got 2 buffs. And it's still F. Yep, it's garbage. Better than Chain Gun, though, at least. Right, let's go. I think there are some cases where it can do well, but I don't think there's really any practical scenarios where you're gonna be like, yes, I want a Hellfire. Since recording this video, I have used Hellfire a bit more, and I can definitely say it is better than I gave it credit for. I've already deleted this tier list, so I can't go back and edit it, but if I were to replace Hellfire on this list, I would probably put it in A below Particle Beam. And that's it for the legendary ones, but for the sake of argument, I also have the epic 10 energy ones. Nade Launcher and Cryo Launcher, very, very similar. They're both B, both decent. They're okay. You can duplicate them. You can probably get some good results with it sometimes, but it's probably not going to be your best weapon. They are very versatile, though, so you could use it on almost any mech and do pretty decently with it. Fuse Mortar, I also think is pretty decent, especially at lower SP when there's less mods, but it's pretty darn situational. I'm sure you all know that, but it can get some good results. Quantum Gun, also F tier. It has just slightly worse DPS than Chain Gun, so it's like pretty much the same, but a little bit worse. And then Fusion Cannon is just kind of like the most garbage weapon you could ever invest in. And yeah, that's pretty much all of the credit-based 10 energy weapons. So hopefully if you had any questions regarding like, oh, what should I buy and duplicate? Hopefully that's answered your question. I know a lot of people have that question. Yeah, as always, some of this kind of does come down to preference, but this is my general opinion. Anyway, that'll be it for me. Appreciate y'all. Take care.